pretty steep. And so I guess this whole service for 7 years in order to obtain Rachel, that might be a part of that. It might have something to do with the age of Rachel. Maybe she was, kind of young or too young to be married. That might or might not be, but it's possible. And so 7 years is kind of, an appropriate time for him to be in the house and serving her father Laban for Rachel. But he's willing to do it. I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And it says in verse 20, 2 verses later, it says, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. And here he's in love, right? And they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. So he is smitten, and he is smitten for 7 years. Now that's true love, right? So maybe now we can try to understand his crying over her. But 7 years just goes by in a blink, and he's so happy, and they just seem only like a few days because of his great love for her. So Jacob finds somebody, Rachel, and we come to the marriage time. And this is the part I just cannot understand at all. So the time is up. Jacob says to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in to her. Now Leah had a little bit of a problem. It says something about her eyes being weak, and we don't know exactly what her physical issue was, but after 7 years, she's the older daughter and is still not married. And Laban makes a reference to it's not proper for the younger daughter to be married before the older daughter. That's going to kind of be his excuse for having given Leah to Jacob. That's going to be his excuse. It's not proper for the older one to remain unmarried when the younger one gets married. So you had to marry the older one first. But I just don't understand. He goes in to her, and it's not Rachel at all. For how much he was in love with her for all those 7 years, to wake up in the morning and discover it wasn't Rachel at all, but Leah? I don't know. I would have been kind of fighting mad. He was nice to Laban. And I don't understand how he just did not know, except if he was a little extra zinged from the party the night before. It doesn't say anything that's what they did, but we're just trying to understand what happened here, that he didn't realize that it was Leah. Now, if we want to just kind of piece some things together, it's ironic, and maybe this is kind of the Lord's work. We know the Lord's hand is in it, for however he didn't notice that it was Leah. Because his eyes are blind, just as his eyes were blind, and he pulled the fast one over Isaac, and here his eyes are blind, and somebody pulls a fast one on him. And so it's kind of, this cycle is going on. We've already seen a lot of parallels between what's happening to Abraham, what's happening to Isaac, and what's happening now to Jacob. But there's a lot of parallels in their stories, and a lot of the things that happen to one happen to the others as well. And so this is, just another one of those things. Jacob is getting back you will reap what you sow. You've heard that, right? And so this is what he has sown himself, and now he's kind of reaping the same thing. And so, he wakes up in the morning and behold, it's Leah, not Rachel. So he goes back to Laban, and of course, they say, wait seven days, and you can marry Rachel. But you'll have to work another 7 years for her. Now that's the bum end of the deal right there. That he has to work yet another 7 years for Rachel. But he agrees to it. And so after 7 days, he marries Rachel, and he goes into her, and it says in verse 30, he loved Rachel more than Leah. And there's another parallel from what's happened in his own family, where Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob, and Rebekah loved Jacob more than Esau. And so here we see favoritism at work again, except this time with respect to Jacob and his wives. He loved Rachel more than Leah. Now, It's not wrong for Jacob to love Rachel more prior to his marriage to them. After all, he wants to marry Rachel. But once he is married, then it becomes an issue. And so we see from the Lord's perspective, and this is really interesting right here. From the Lord's perspective, Jacob had the duty and the responsibility to truly love Leah now that he had married her, and not to show any favoritism against her by loving Rachel more. So it says, verse 18, now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you another 7 years. Oh yeah, 31. That's the verse I was looking for. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So this is the Lord's doing. He is recognizing Jacob's lack of love for Leah, and he is therefore visiting her and blessing her to compensate her, in a sense, for his lack of love. So the Lord is behind this, and we see something about love in this respect here. And you know, if we're going to address relationships and love in this world, so much of it is based on, you know, how we feel, you know, how one person feels towards the other, and so much of the action, the dynamics of the relationship is based on how the one spouse feels towards another. But we see from this a principle from the Lord that there is a responsibility and an obligation to love your wedded wife and to love your wedded husband. Before God, it is your duty and your responsibility to do that, even if she is unlovable like Leah apparently was. That does not diminish or take away from the responsibility. And so God sees it, and God blesses Leah because of it. So that's the Lord's perspective there. So Rachel is barren, and Leah begins to have children. And notice, she has Reuben, verse 32. And notice, the naming of Reuben arises out of her struggle in life. Notice it says in verse 32, the Lord has surely looked on my what? The Lord has surely looked on my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. So she is unloved even after what? A year at least, minimum, 9 months minimum, I suppose. She is still unloved, and she is still feeling the brunt of his lack of love for her after the first 9 months. Minimum. It may have been a little bit longer, but we don't know. And so she feels that she is afflicted. The Lord is looking upon me. I've had a son. This is the good thing about it all. Now, for sure, my husband will love me because I have given him a son. And that was an important thing back then. And she conceives again, verse 33, bears another son. And notice again how she calls it. She names it. Because the Lord has heard that I am what? What did you say? Hated. Yeah, unloved, hated. He has therefore given me this son also. And so she called his name Simeon. And then, verse 34, she bore a son. This time my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. So after 3 sons, she is still longing for her husband to show her the love that he's supposed to show her. And she is hoping that in the birth of these 3 children, these 3 sons, that he will finally give to her the love that she deserves. And then she bore again and had another son. Now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. And then she stopped bearing. And it could be, this last one, the naming of Judah is a little bit different than the others. She's not complaining or expressing her heartfelt sorrow that her husband doesn't love her. She doesn't do that this time. This time she praises the Lord. And it could be that finally he has come around and he has begun to give her the attention that she needs. Possibly. I mean, it doesn't say that, except we might gain that from we might imply that from the fact that she praises the Lord this time rather than complaining like she has done before. Any thoughts so far before I finish it up? Any comments or questions?
kind of wonder why
Oh, yeah, Philip?
Laban would do what he did.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's just asking for trouble.
Yeah. You mean marrying both of them to Jacob? And,
Well, particularly the whole deception of it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you got her married, but
yeah.
what's her life going to be like?
Right. And it's going to cause trouble. It does cause trouble in their family. It causes trouble in their relationship. And it could be, that would be another parallel. Jacob's kind of trickery of Esau and even Isaac, and now he's being tricked himself. So there's some parallelism there. But yeah, what is Laban thinking? And everything that I read was, he was just the shrewd businessman, and he was going to just get everything he could out of Jacob. And of course the whole, deceiving Jacob like Jacob had deceived came into play also. But yeah, the whole thing is just asking for trouble to set it up this way. For a period of 7 years, surely you would think that the conversation would have come up. Now Jacob, I really want you to marry Rachel, but I've got this daughter Leah, and she's older, and we've got to get her married before you marry Rachel. We've just got to find. That's at year 2, right? That's the conversation. At year 3, after year 3, it's like, Jacob, I'm really getting nervous here. How do I even have a suitor, for my daughter Leah, and we've really got to find somebody. And if I was Jacob, I'd be like on the hunt also, right? Hey, Leah, what about this guy? What about this guy? Hey, Leah. By year 5 or by year 6, it's like desperation sets in. It's like, Leah, why are you so picky? Just marry anybody.
I'll work 7 years so you can marry him.
Yeah, I'll work another 7 years just so you can marry this guy. So, but there's no conversation like that takes place. This is just blatant. Laban just tricks him. And again, I don't know how it was that Jacob was deceived like this, except for the 2 things that I said. But both of those are we're just kind of speculating, because there's no clue or hint at it in the text at all. So we're just trying to figure out how this could have happened, because it just seems so bizarre to us. Christina, did you have a question?
We kind of covered this already, but I never forget.
Yeah.
But it's just all troubling, the whole thing. At the beginning of Genesis, where God talked about the 2 becoming one flesh,
Yeah.
and then you have this polygamy, but there's no mention of God being against it or
That's right.
about it or anything. In fact, like, even Rachel was the one sort of giving trouble, it wasn't the fault.
Yeah.
She was being married. The whole thing was like troubling.
Yeah. What's really interesting is that when they're fleeing from Laban, this is several chapters from where we're at right now. A few chapters. But she steals her father's idols, and she sits on them. And under the pretense of having her period, she refuses to get up, and she gets away with having stolen them. My point is that you had made the comment, there's no mention of God in this. And that was one of the points that we were going to come to in a moment. There is no mention of God in any of what's going on here.
Well, there is though, because he's upset because he is not loved. And he is
Well, yeah, God interjects. God interjects here, but from Jacob's perspective, or Leah's perspective, or Laban's perspective, or Rachel's perspective, there's no mention of God at all. When Rebekah, if we go back to Isaac's wife, when Rebekah was barren, she cried out to the Lord. When they were struggling in the womb, she cried out to the Lord. We don't see any of that here with Jacob. It's just completely absent. But we see God is watching what's happening here to the point where he does act, because Jacob's not loving Leah like he should. And God does act and opens her womb and closes Rachel's womb. Tyson?
Judah came from Leah, how God used his firstborn as ruler.
Yeah.
It wasn't Rachel, it was Leah.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's not even, it's like a subtle,
Yeah.
subtle there.
Yeah, it's like Leah had 4 chances that one of her sons would be in the line of the Messiah. And it's good she had 4 of them because, you know, Reuben got put out, and Simeon got put out, and Levi got put out. And then we come to Judah, and it's like, if it didn't work with Judah, then it would have been one of the concubine children. But you're right, and that's a gracious point from God's perspective there, that he uses one of Leah's sons, Judah, to be where the seed of the Messiah comes through, rather than Rachel, the loved one from Jacob's perspective. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, we have a couple of hands over here.
There was also a harlot involved in that message.
A what?
A harlot.
Oh yeah, there was. You just look at Matthew chapter 1, yeah.
One of the things that I see is even before God opens Rachel's womb, sons are born to handmaidens.
Yeah,
It's like somebody's
yeah,
just pushing this into Rachel's face like that.
yeah.
But then in the end, who are the 2 sons that Jacob loves the most?
Yeah,
Joseph and Benjamin,
that's right.
the sons
Of Rachel. Yeah. Yeah, Jacob is going to love Rachel more than Leah to the end. And he's going to extend that favoritism to Rachel's son Joseph. And Joseph actually becomes the instrument of God. And so, you know, even while the line of the Messiah comes through Judah, God is also going to show his mighty hand of work in Joseph's life. So that's coming up in the rest of the book. As a matter of fact, there's more said about Joseph than any of the other Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. All right, any final questions or thoughts? Okay, again, some similarities that we've already mentioned. There's deception by Laban. We've seen deception at work. There's been barrenness. We've seen that at work. There's favoritism. We've seen that. There's a dysfunctional family. 2 wives and sisters at that, and they're going to contend and kind of compete with each other. Rachel couldn't bear. Leah is unloved. So there's just this dysfunction within this family here. And then, like I had mentioned from Christina's comment, that there's just no mention of God from their part in any of this. So just a lot of struggle, and it's going to be a long time, I think, before Jacob finally comes to his senses and turns his life over to God. Probably that event where he's wrestling with the man until the morning, where he's wrestling with the angel of the Lord there until the morning. That's probably the time where he finally yields himself to the work of God in his life. Okay, so that's Genesis chapter